Good morning. This is Jason Moss of Georgia Manufacturing Alliance and Manufacturing News Network. We're excited about a conference call we got going on today. I'm really digging using this Zoom platform so that we can get live face-to-face interaction with a lot of folks. The reason that we're doing these calls is for the past 12 years, we're an association that supports manufacturers around the state. And up until 2 weeks ago, we'd never done a webinar. So we're using technology to transition from our handshake association to a digital association right now, based on the challenges that we're facing as a nation with the coronavirus. It's impacting all of us. We're having to figure out new ways to kind of find a new normal, but continue to support and stay on mission to help support our manufacturers across the state. So what we're going to do is just give you a quick outline, the game plan for today on what we're going to get covered today. We have 4 guests that are invited. I know we've got 2 of them online with us, and the other 2 are going to be chiming in hopefully in just a little bit. But the goal for this conference call is to be able to share industry best practices, what's going on in the space, how different people are responding and different manufacturers are responding to the challenges that we face as we go through a little bit of go through the social distancing that we're learning all about, and again, kind of learning a new way to do business and engage with each other. So I believe that the communication is the key. The more that we can talk to each other, the more we can share what's working, the better it is for everybody. So I want to again kind of give you an idea of what we're going to do on the call. I'll introduce our guests. We'll give them the opportunity to share a little bit about what's going on in their space at their facility, some of the things that they learned, and also open up some questions that they may have that they want to pose to the audience. We will open the calls up as best we can, depending on how much background noise. We may have to use the chat feature down at the bottom. If you're not real familiar with the Zoom meeting platform, if you hover your mouse over towards the bottom of your screen, you should see a little button that says chat. You can click on that, and that chat feature, you can type in questions, and we'll try to answer those questions as they come up. So again, what we're going to do is I'll introduce our guests. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on in their space. We have 2 really cool specials that we'll announce at the very end of this call, so make sure you stay on all the way to the end. And then we want to recognize and show some appreciation to Daniel Lebowski at Lebasco with Variable. They're our sponsor for this session, and we're going to keep these calls to an hour length tops. At 45-minute mark, we're going to transition and roll this over to Daniel, and he's going to share a little bit about some tools that they're using to help support manufacturers all around the state. Very fascinating process and products that they've got that are having an immediate impact on manufacturing today in ways that I would have never imagined. So they're going to share with us the last 15 minutes, and then we've got some really neat specials that are available to everybody that's on this call. This is a component that we're doing as part of the Manufacturing News Network. So Manufacturing News Network is just a project that we're working on through GMA to serve manufacturers all across the country and hopefully across the globe, sharing best practices. We've got a ton of information that is available on the front end of the web page. The interviews that we've done, I've actually interview that I did recently with Bart Freeman of Daniel Defense and Tom Kirby. In-depth interview. We just talked about what was going on in preparation for the coronavirus and how that was impacting business. So if you want to hear that, that's a really great tips and ideas from those guys. But we're leaving the interviews on the front end. But if you're interested in plugging into these roundtable calls, starting next week, the roundtable calls will be available to subscribers to the Manufacturing News Network. It's a simple subscription package. All the information is online at Manufacturing News Network. Just click on subscription, it explains what it is and how it works. So with that, what I want to do is I want to open up the call to Mr. Bart Freeman, Daniel Defense, and kind of pick your brain just a little bit about what's going on in South Georgia. If you want to tell us, Bart, real quick, tell us For those of you who don't know who Daniel Defense is, what your role is there, and what's the immediate impact that you guys are seeing there at Daniel and staff.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Bart Freeman, the Vice President of Human Resources for Daniel Defense. So we're a firearms manufacturer located in Bryan County in Ellabelle. You know, right now it's pretty much business as usual. However, I can kind of take you through a few things that we've kind of talked through and discussed in the last few days. Obviously, as with the recent school closings, which we all kind of felt that was coming it sooner versus later, we began canvassing our workforce last week to try to determine, you know, how many shop floor employees, especially, we're going to be impacted in the event that schools close. To try to get an understanding which one of those are just going to be out, going to need to be at home, versus which ones was going to trade off with their spouse or significant other, versus which ones would be not impacted at all. So we've got a pretty good handle on that. Looks like it's about 10% of shop floor would be impacted. If that is the case, we feel like that's you know, decent. Secondly, this is not a full go yet, but we anticipate announcing telecommuting for our salaried exempt workforce beginning tomorrow. If nothing, you know, changes, we're probably going to start that process tomorrow. Like many of you probably on the phone, we have canceled. For example, we had company picnics. We have an all-employee luncheon that we do every month with our employees where we feed them. We've canceled both of those. We are doing less meetings, anything right now with really, you know, over 10. We just avoid it, either break them down into small group meetings or just not have the meetings at all. We've paused any kind of non-essential travel, and all the things that, again, I'm sure everybody's doing in terms of hygiene. We're just trying to keep constant communications and tips and what to do and what not to do out to our employees. Got as much Clorox wipes and Lysol wipes and hand sanitizer stations all throughout the facility. We put hand wipes at every door to say, okay, grab a hand wipe. You know, use it to open the door where you don't have to touch anything that you don't absolutely necessarily have to do. So that's kind of just a real high level. The other thing we've done is obviously relax any type of attendance policies that is coronavirus related, and just trying to stay ahead of the game and build ahead in terms of production.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's great. That's great information. You know, it looks like, you know, we've talked about your contingency plans, your business continuity plans that you guys have worked for. And it looks like all of those pieces are coming to pass and working like they're supposed to. So congratulations on that. Having prepared. Your workforce, how many people do you currently have?
We've got about 220.
About 220. Okay. And you know, we're all trying to do, you know, follow the best guidance as we can. And appreciate all that you're doing and sharing that information with the crew here.
Thank you.
I'm going to hop over real quick and we're going to talk to Tom Kirby. Tom, feel free to, I think you can unmute your line there. And okay, perfect. And Tom, if you would share just a little bit about Tom. Again, Tom did an interview with us a while back, and we got that on the front end of Manufacturing News Network. Tom has been a great friend and supporter of GMA for years, and he's got some pretty interesting perspectives in a couple of the roles that he has. So Tom, if you would kind of give us an idea, tell us who you are, and what your role is there, and what your extra roles are that you're doing around the state, and share a little bit in that space.
All right, my name is Tom Kirby. I'm the HR manager at Ligon Platt here in Monroe, Georgia. I'm also the state representative for House District 114, which I represent Loganville, parts of Walton, Newton, or Walton, Barrow, Rockdale, and Gwinnett counties. Of course, I was down at the Capitol all day yesterday as we look at the Emergency Powers Act and what we did. And it is a little, I'll start with that. It's a little scary. I mean, there's a line in the Emergency Powers Act in our Constitution that basically says gives the governor, in times of emergency, with our approval, basically to do anything he feels needs to be done for the people of the state of Georgia. That is a pretty broad brush that he can just really do anything. And that's why it wasn't a 30-minute meeting like some thought it was going to be. We spent all day because he gets it for 30 days and he can renew it. So we're already scheduled to go back on April the 15th. First time it's ever been done in the state. First time emergency power has ever been done in the state. And also the first time the General Assembly can call themselves in special session on their own with 3/5 majority. And so that's what we did yesterday, to call ourselves back on the 15th when he would be renewing this if needed. Of course, he can do the renewal. It's kind of backwards, I think, and some people do on, he doesn't have to have our approval to renew it, but we could stop it. So that's why the meeting scheduled, if it, for some reason we thought the governor was out of control. Now, if things are in some of the worst case scenarios we've heard from the CDC, then we don't have to go down there and get back together as a group. So it made for a long day, but a good day as we really kind of walked through very slowly, giving any governor that almost absolute power that our Constitution actually allows them to have.
Right.
We get a few briefings that probably don't all, the news media gets them. We just probably get them a little earlier. We heard a lot from the Department of Community Health yesterday, and they were getting stuff from CDC, and they were sharing a lot of worst case scenarios things with us. And this is the stuff that we've got to be very careful of, because we don't want to get panic situations. But there's a CDC worst case scenario for the United States that says possible death toll between 200,000 and 1.7 million. But when they start throwing out numbers like that in the worst case, it really causes some panic, and those things that hopefully the news media handles responsible. But I think all that whether it's our family, friends, or people at work, we're going to have to be prepared to make sure we know what the best answers when these things come up. I don't think anybody's predicting that. It's really where we're going to go. The biggest thing they say that we're looking for, if you haven't heard it, you hear the term flattening the curve. And what they're talking about is that rise in people going to the hospital or treatment that are positive with coronavirus. What they fear is what happened in Italy, when you've got 5-6 times the number of people sick than the hospitals can't handle. You got a real problem, and especially not picking on Bart down there in South Georgia, but they don't have all the hospitals up and running like we do here in the Atlanta market. So the rural Georgia, with the lack of hospital care, that's a big concern. And if a big infection were in the group and all of a sudden the hospitals are overrun, that's what Italy saw and really caused and compounded their problem. So all this social distancing, all the things we're doing now is to flatten that curve. People still may get some of the sicknesses, but not going to overwhelm the hospital. Someplace, and I wish I had it. I've been crazy yesterday and today, Jason, and if I find it, I'll get it to you. I've got a sheet that talks about 80% of the people that will test positive for coronavirus will basically have head cold, mild flu-like symptoms. So that's 80% of the people is what they're projecting that get this. And I think it's important that we continue to share that information. Now here at Liggett, as the HR manager, it's kind of the biggest thing. And the same thing Bart talked about, the school closures, the child care, having to make some exceptions on attendance policies, how working with people individually. We've just got to put some flexibility in and we're a 3-shift operation, about 300 people.
300 people with 3 shifts. And you're working 6 days, 5 days?
5 days, 5 days a week. We've shut out all overtime. We've shut out group meetings. Our Gimba walks and things like that are not going on right now. We've got our Gimba room with all the boards and charts, and everybody goes in there and updates those individually, and then you take time to go ahead and look what everybody else has and check them out every day. But we don't put 20 people in that room and talk about it all as a group right now. So we're taking those precautions, working, and then we're actually using Facebook and social media, telling employees, we've got Liggett & Platt has our own Facebook page, and we'll keep information out there. If anything's going on that they need to know, they can get on that Facebook page, and from any kind of issue here at the plant or anything in the area that we know about.
Now, is that a private Facebook page? I mean, is that?
It's just Ligon Platt Facebook page. I'd have to get to, I'm a little older than some. The young guys did it where people can't post on there, only we can post stuff. So whatever that page is.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, hey, dude, I'm learning all this stuff with you, brother.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out. We may get somebody to come give us a little Facebook group training on this session program as well. So I think we can all learn a few things.
But it is certainly trying times, and hopefully it's not a historical event, but in some ways I think it already has been with some of the shutdowns we're seeing. Restaurants, and Atlanta was very, very dead yesterday, almost eerie when we were down there at the Capitol. We were used to people everywhere, and nobody there but us, so it was kind of quiet.
Yeah, Wesley was driving around a little bit yesterday, and he called and he said, "Yeah, it's like Christmas Day traffic." I was like, "There's still some people out, but a lot."
Well, I think that's the other thing. We go back last week. We did our crossover day on Thursday, and then after Friday, and what they called first readers, we adjourned the General Assembly. Or no, we didn't adjourn. We recessed until a date certain called by the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor. Once they felt it safe to come back to town. At that time, when we left everything, we were thinking it was going to be about 2 weeks we were going to be out. Yesterday, we talked a lot about the budget has to be done by July 1st, and that we may not come back until June now to do the last 12 days. And maybe not even do all 12 of them, just do the big budget or the fiscal year budget that starts July 1st, and that will be it. So a lot of concern on what that's going to look like going forward. And then when we left, and what the governor was asking for in his press conference on Thursday, if you saw it, is people to stay home, go to work, go home, go shopping, get the essentials. Don't hoard like toilet paper. But here in Loganville, Friday night, every restaurant in town was packed. Walmart, Kroger's, Publix, all full. I mean, Saturday was a beautiful day. The city of Loganville, every business was open. People were out wide open. It was a big business day, everything. And it's like, that's not what we're asking you to do. So I think some of this, sometimes you've got to put out a little more information to try to get their attention so people start changing some of those daily routines.
Right. And I think all of us, if we're working together and follow, like I mentioned earlier, we're a business, a belly-to-belly handshake association. We're all about live events and stuff. And we canceled, and we had one more event that was still kind of tentative on the books for Jekyll Brewing, but we got everything canceled through the mid-April. And we're just going to follow guidance based on that, because I believe all of us as business leaders, especially that's on this line, the impact and influence that you have in your community, not just in business. People will do what they see you doing, not what they hear you say. And I think that that's a critical component. All got to step it up and explain to people that, it's not, the sky's not falling, but we need to be wise in the choices. Well, Tom, thank you so much. I really appreciate that insight and input. We also, Tony Merton, are you on the line with us? Tony, are you with us? If you're talking, we can't hear you. There's a little unmute button down at the bottom left of your screen. If you're with us, go ahead and click on that. All right. And I believe that we do have Felix Lynn. Felix, are you on the line with us?
I am.
All right, Felix, we're glad to have you on the line. We are really, really excited about having you guys plugging in as well. So, if you would, Felix, if you share with us a little bit about your position and the company that you work with. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and what you guys are doing in Middle Georgia.
Hi, everyone. This is Felix Lynn. I'm the VP of HR for Bluebird Body Company, the school bus manufacturer that's located in Middle Georgia. Our headquarters in Macon, Georgia, and our manufacturing facilities are located in Fort Valley, Georgia. We have roughly about 200 employees at our Macon office and a little bit over 2,000 employees at our two of our facilities in Fort Valley. And sorry, I was a few minutes late. We actually just got done with another round of contingency planning to deal with this issue.
Okay.
So some of the things that we're looking, that we're doing right now is obviously in the last week or two, we've already banned, similar to what Bart was saying with Daniel Defense, we've already banned all travel and also banned visitors coming into our offices or our manufacturing facilities. Starting later this week, we've also put in place plans for remote working for our corporate office for a number of our employees, but it's not 100% remote. For some cases, we're actually rotating folks, kind of a 50-50 for some functions. So some people will be working remotely, some people will be coming into the office, as well as doing something similar for our leadership team, making sure that there's not 100% of our leadership team going to be in one location at a time.
Sure.
Obviously, the biggest question is what we do with our manufacturing plants. And our situation is a little bit different because, surely based on the employee population size, again, at one of our facilities, we have roughly 1,700 people between two different shifts. So a number of protocols that we're putting in place. One, we have a medical clinic that's on site. So that's a little bit of an advantage. Even though we don't have any sort of testing kits for the COVID-19, but we do have a good bit of supply for the common flu that's out there right now. So we've established a protocol in terms of if an employee raise your hand and say, hey, I might have a certain symptom, and then that's on site, we'll go get them through the medical clinic and test them for common flu. It's kind of a process of elimination. If it's not the flu, then we have a quarantine room set up to quarantine the individuals, and then obviously from there, working closely with the local health departments and officials in terms of further quarantine and logistics with employees.
Okay.
Other common practice in terms of actively cleaning and disinfecting the area, we have contracting services come in that's going to be disinfecting the lines, several times a day, and then making sure that during changeovers for shifts, there's enough time in between that the population between different shifts there's not a whole lot of cross mingling, making sure there's a break in between.
Okay.
Other solutions that we're putting in place, we're actually putting up thermal scanning solutions to look at body temperature as employees are coming in, and then obviously if there's anybody that's meet the criteria of fever and whatnot, we'll have plans in place to isolate them.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that we're looking, and then other than that, just from a capacity and production standpoint, looking at different rate options, also evaluating, different alternative shift potentials for our second half of the year. So a lot of moving pieces right now. I think we're probably all in a similar boat in terms of monitoring the situation, both from the government official, also locally or at the federal level, and then make adjustments whenever necessary.
Right. Well, that is very helpful, Felix. I mean, and we're trying to identify different size organizations and how each of them are responding, because pulling the trigger to send 1,600 people home in Middle Georgia, that's a pretty big decision. And I know you guys are not taking that lightly, but also we got to make sure that we're keeping our folks as safe as we can all the way through the process. And I know Phil Horlock there at Bluebird and Jay and the crew that you got, you guys are focused and committed on doing the right thing for your people and taking care of people. We've toured Bluebird a couple times, and it is a fantastic facility. Now, we did talk to Jay the other day, and we were told that y'all are canceled for guests for a little while. We got that. As soon as we get the all clear, we're excited about coming down and looking at your new facility. But again, having that mindset and having that spirit, making sure that you're taking care of your folks, it just shows through in all that you do, the decisions that you guys are making. He did mention something about maybe doing some shift staggering or adjusting some of your shift change-up. I thought that was pretty interesting. That's something that I think that a lot of folks have had conversations about. And Bart and I were talking about that on our previous call, a little bit about what they're doing. Bart, how's that working? I know we talked about in the event of if school, was canceled, maybe single parents or, employees with school-age kids. Have you guys pulled the trigger on any of that so far as shifting folks around?
We have not right now. We've got a weekend shift that we run 12-hour shifts, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, depending on if we have, we'll say less resources in a specific department, or if one's impacted more so than the other, we may have to, modify those shifts and pull some of the weekend crew to the day shifts and, consolidate it. And like Felix said, we're doing some of that as well, in terms of at least thinking about, we've got a night crew and a day shift during the week. Right now, there's some lap over about 30 minutes to where they tie in with each other. So kind of getting back into the social distancing, do we want to stagger those more so that, those folks don't run across each other for a period of time?
In large groups, for sure.
Right.
Sure. Perfect. And Tom, how are you guys working in that space as well? And what's that? What does that look like for you guys as far as shifting employees around?
Well, we've got it set up right now. We've got a 30-minute window for shift change between all three of our shifts. So the ability to keep the, as we call it, social distancing, we're all learning what that is now, is there. We've also spread out all of our breaks and lunches, so we don't we don't stop and just have lunch time for 20 minutes or break time at 10 minutes. They're all staggered, so it has a lot less people, a lot smaller groups in our two different break rooms we have here at this facility. Our workspace here is such in the nature of making inner springs and box springs. It's big equipment, big machines. So people are spread out on the plant floor. We don't have a lot of cluster of people out there to worry about. But lunch and break time was probably the biggest concern we had, as well as the shift change. So,
yeah, speaking of lunch and shift change and breaks, I mean, what are you guys doing as far as having access to with a lot of them closing down? Is that impacting you guys? I mean, I know in a lot of excuse me, in a lot of the areas, the timing doesn't allow for a lot of folks to get off the floor and bounce around. But have y'all seen, or have y'all got any plans as far as bringing in food, having access, extending or limiting time for lunch breaks for people to go find new places for lunch if the local restaurants are not open?
Well, ours is all on site, so we don't clock out. It's a 20-minute paid lunch that we do here. So our vendor has done a good job with the marketplace, keeping they keep that supply with all the drinks, food, soft drinks, the candy and everything. Plus people are, that bring their own lunch in. So that hadn't been an issue here. And as far as we know in the conversation with the vendor, we don't see any problem in that supply continuing on as normal. But in this day and time, we got to be prepared. Everything's changing quickly on us. So if that were to be an issue, then we'll have to come up. We don't have a plan to come up with what we do yet, but we'll come up with something.
Right, I got you. How about you? Y'all doing as far as lunch and having access for food, that kind of thing? What's that looking like? Good to see you with you. Felix, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Jason. Sorry, there's a lag in there.
Okay.
Yes, we do have an on-site solution as well. but the bulk of our employee, there's not a whole lot of them that's kind of going off-site. Our lunch is a 30-minute lunch break, so that's not a huge concern for us right now. But one of the things I also like to talk about is kind of how we can proactively manage this a little bit. One of the specific things as the leadership team got together this morning, we talk about is, a lot of scenarios we look at right now from a plant closure standpoint is what if there are confirmed cases in our facility or in our community, right? What do we do in response to that? But one thing that we're trying to be mindful of is the psychology part of, on the back end of it, once the plant, shuts down, how can we encourage people to come back to work, and how is the ramp up and the startup will look like? So an option for us right now is also looking at the schedule and see where there's flexibility. And given that, as of yesterday, the governor announced all schools are going to be closed, is that maybe we proactively look at shutting down the plant for 2 or 3 days, call it kind of a test run if whatnot, but then actively communicate with the employees the things that we're doing to keep the facilities clean and disinfected and the different protocols, and then get them back to work early next week, so that from a employee communication, perception, and psychology standpoint, that they know the company is doing everything we can to be proactive and have their health and safety in mind. So I think just from a overall managing this standpoint, that actually might help us versus once there's confirmed cases and we have to react to something, because there's always a chance that people are scared and they're not sure what the company has done, or there's might be some credibility issues and whatnot. And what if there's only 50% of your workforce that end up coming back, or less, right? Then you got to manage from a operation standpoint, how do you deal with that? So this is from a planning standpoint, something that we're taking into consideration.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I mean, so if there were pieces to think about for all of us to chew on, is if there were a confirmed case in your facility, how would you manage that? How would you, what are the processes for shutdown? And then also, and I love how you're thinking, and I love the mentality is, okay, so what does an all clear look like? What does it look like when it says that we can come back, and when is that achieved? I mean, and what's the scrub down? Bart asked a great question: is how would you, if there is a confirmed case in your area, is you're going to do a deep clean clearly, but is that y'all's existing cleaning crew and process, or would you bring in an outside crew to do that, or what does that look like to give your employees confidence to be able to come back to work? Right?
Yeah, for us, it's kind of a dual approach, right? We have our normal facility team that they're increasing the frequency of their cleanings for common areas, bathrooms, doorknobs, and all that. But again, we've also contracted another a third-party cleaning firm that's following EPA and CDC guidelines in terms of the solution they're using, best practices, and they're coming in and actively doing disinfectants, for some of our plant, whether it's the lines or other areas that it's more of a fogging and spraying type solution, which can obviously have a larger impact. So we're doing these things before there are active confirmed cases or even suspected cases. It's all about just showing the employees that we are proactively taking steps, and that in the event something does happen, we have things in place to address all those things.
Okay. And again, one of the other pieces, and again, obviously, I'm no scientist at any level, but if there's, Tom's really enjoying that. Thank you, bud. If there is a shutdown, if there's a significant shutdown, I'm reading a ton of information as much as I can consume on what are they saying this, what's the life expectancy of the virus outside of the human body. If you shut down for a week or 10 days, pretty much from everything that I've been able to see, if there was a live virus in your facility within, and some are saying 6 and some are saying 5, 6, and then up to 9, which is the longest I've seen on anything, is if it can survive outside the body for 9 days, after the 10th day, it's already it's eliminated itself. So, and there's a lot of studies that are going on. They're trying to find out exactly what that looks like, because it's an important thing. Okay, so what's the ramp back up process? So, guys, this has been fantastic. I love the format. I appreciate all the engagement. I do want to open it up. So this is sort of the process. I'm going to open it up for last comments or thoughts, other things that you'd like to share for our panel speakers. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to hit us on social media. We're gonna post this on our webpage. Feel free to send us emails through support@georgiamanufacturing.com. If you have questions, if you got any comments that you want to ask the panel, please do that through chat. If you're not using Zoom, if you just called in, we really encourage everybody to use Zoom on these calls so that we're able to interact and be able to respond quickly to the chat, and also get to kind of, again, meet sort of face to face. So
one thing, Jason.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot about, if you're in the area, Athens Clarke County put a curfew in yesterday from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. There is an exception for people going to work and coming home from work. Don't be surprised if you don't see something like that statewide if things continue. And that's something you need to be prepared. There should be the same work exception in there. I talked to the governor when I was down here talking to the governor's office yesterday. That should be in any curfew that he puts out for work exception. But as we all know, especially in a big plant, when people hear a curfew, they're going to kind of panic a little more. So that might be one to be prepared for if it's not in your area yet.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like when Colorado legalized marijuana for recreational use. I know this is like completely different, but we got a lot to do.
Where are you going with this one, Jason?
When Colorado legalized recreational marijuana, I had several plant managers call me and say their guys were sitting out on the cooler out back saying, enjoying what they were not supposed to be enjoying. And they said, well, it's legal somewhere, so it's got to be legal here. Just because, one area locked down or did a curfew, you got to make sure that we understand how that works. And it's critical that this is the point. It's critical that we over communicate with our employees and our team members what's going on in our community and how that impacts our job. Because if they say that there's a curfew and you got somebody working second shift, it's 9 to 5. You got to make sure that they understand they got to work permit to come to work even after hours. As long as the facility is open. So I think, again, I believe it's our job to make sure that we communicate clearly with everybody in our community, our employees, upline and downline and leadership, so that people really understand what it is and how it impacts us. So I appreciate that, and I had to throw in my little Colorado. But anyway, all right, thanks much, Tom. Bart, what have you got? Anything else you'd like to share on the space?
Just more of this may not be the right question or format, but if anyone does have any, I guess the one critical question I have is back to in the event that we do have a case come up or somebody's contracted, we're in the process of trying to identify any type of, cleaning crews that would, one, be qualified to do such, and two, has the resources and the response time. Okay. So we're struggling with that a little bit. So if there's anyone that has any recommendations, Felix has sent one through the chat. That would be helpful. And then secondly, at least I'm not aware, the CDC is giving some guidelines on it, but we're wrestling around. If we have that situation come up, do we, completely, evacuate the entire plant? Do we, clean down the area that the person was in and other spaces? common areas, break areas. You know, what is the protocol and what is the right answer to that? So that's a little thing that we're a little bit still fuzzy on.
Okay. And so we're documenting all these questions. Anything that we can't get answered directly on this call, we're going to document them and make sure that we communicate as best we can. That is the critical, and that's the reason that we're putting these roundtables together is to share best practices, figure out what questions you're asking, let's find an answer and share it with the entire community so that we're able to kind of push through this. We did have a question from somebody, Lisa King had a question. Is if the plant shuts down for 3 or 4 days, will the employees be paid for the time missed? Anybody want to pick that one up and chat with you? What does that look like at this point?
I can respond just, you know, not much of a response. In ours, we would offer them obviously the ability to use PTO as someone else answered as well. We would also have them the opportunity to use absence no pay, but it would not count against their attendance program. And I guess the only third thing I would say that it's my understanding that there is some legislation that was passed by the House that's sitting with the Senate, I think, as we speak, that would provide some sick leave wages for COVID-related absences. Okay. So that hasn't been passed, but we're waiting on that.
I got you. That sounds good. Mr. Tom, can you chime in on that? You got any?
That's federal House. That's in Washington that they're.
That's not Tom doing it.
That's not me. But yeah, they're looking at that. They passed something, and he's correct. It's with the Senate right now. I haven't read the bill. I just heard the summary. And same thing here at Leggett. If we have to shut down whatever paid time off that they have available that they want to use, or a no point no pay type absence, or actually we used to call it an amnesty for attendance is what we schedule. Same thing we do if there's a snow event or something like that. So, you know, now if it's going to drag on, you know, that's a 3 or 4 day thing, which would be a long time. But, you know, when you start getting into 2 or 3 weeks, it changes everything. And, you know, what can we do to help people out there? I don't know if we have the answer for that. I'm not sure anybody really does. It's uncharted water, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, this is Jason's simple thinking is if a company had to let somebody go, and you know, not that we'd ever want to do that, but the question was asked in an earlier call is if you had to let somebody go due to lack of work, does unemployment pick up in that? I mean, is that a crazy question to ask? And if it is, you know, what's the where would you ask that question? Because it's not like you go roll up at the unemployment office and, you know, submit any paperwork, because you know, a lot of those offices are closed down or changing the way that they interact with the public as well. So,
hey Jason, I know Georgia is one of the few states left that still has the partial unemployment benefits program. And if you look at the definition itself, it's specifically for unanticipated shutdowns, right? And you know, manufacturing companies, you know, are the ones that typically utilize that. And in previous years, in discussion with the commissioner, I think from a funding standpoint, obviously, you know, there's always concern about whether or not they can meet the funding requirements. There might be some deficits going on. I think the biggest question right now, it is what's the federal government going to do with this House bill that's on the table. I think, you know, probably will require some sort of a federal grant that's going to come down, trickle down to the state level, and then provide some sort of relief to manufacturers and other employers. But I know the bill that's on the table right now have different. There's one version that's it's only employers with less than 500 employees that are eligible, you know, potentially, and then there might be a revision with the Senate version of opening it up to employers with more than 500 people. Right. But I think that's just something that all of us just have to closely monitor the development from a resource standpoint, what the federal government's going to do for all 50 states, really. But this is going to be a tough decision from paying the employees, because you got so many things you got to wrestle with in terms of ensuring that employees have a paycheck. You know, there's financial impact for the company the long term, if this thing drags out more than a few weeks, if it turns into 8 weeks, or you saw that President Trump said this might be August before it's all completely over. Most companies, unless you're, multi-billion, got a lot of cash reserve, not many of us can last until August if you do go through major shutdowns and continue to pay all employees.
Right.
So I think all this is just short-term what we can do. So we're just looking at our PTO programs, talking with our employees, and maybe it's one of those things you kind of ration it out a little bit. If you got 2 weeks, 3 weeks of pay shutdown, pay 50% at a time. And the other thing we look at is, in the event that we are going to pay a portion of PTO out or all of it out, we're also going to stop taking deductions for their benefits.
Yeah.
So that's a cost that the company will absorb. Just kind of further lighten the burden on our employees.
That's cool. Guys, Felix, thank you so much for sharing that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a little transition. I've got a guy on the line, Jacob, with Variable. They're not only are partner with GMA, but also they're sponsoring this educational roundtable that we're doing now. And I'll be super candid, clear with you guys. Our business completely changed. We had to rebuild how we do our business, and we want to make sure that we continue to serve what we're doing. When we open this up for opportunities for sponsorship, because we still got to keep the lights on, keep all this stuff going, and just like you guys do. Variable stepped up immediately, said they want to sponsor the first session just to see how it works. And as I continue to learn the tools that Variable brings to the table, it can have a significant impact on the way that we all as manufacturers deal with this transition. So what I'd like to do is bring Jacob on the line with us. Jacob, can you hear okay? With us, Jacob?
Yeah, you can. It's actually Dan Lobosco, and we have Carter Stanley. Go ahead and take
All right, so we got Dan and Jacob on the line with us. Let me see.
Over here is variable on demand.
All right, cool. I got you. Okay, cool, awesome. Love it. I love technology. I figured that on the fly. All right, so Jacob, Dan, share with us a little bit about who you guys are, what it is you bring to the table, what you have seen going on in the manufacturing space, and how that's impacting the folks that you're currently working with.
Sure, we'll do. Just once again, thanks, Jason, and the rest of the GMA team for giving us the opportunity to speak to you guys today. To those of you who don't really know who we are, Variable is a technology company that has built a digital operations tool specific to the manufacturing and distribution industries. And what it does is it really allows businesses to eliminate labor bottlenecks in their operations in real time to match labor supply with labor demand on a one-to-one basis. So through our platform, businesses gain direct access to thousands of vetted, rated, background checked, fully insured contractors, and ultimately they're able to build out their own personalized network or labor pool of their favorited operators, so to speak, to bring back as their demand fluctuates. As Jason kind of likes to say, really we're just in a lot of ways the Uber for labor and manufacturing and distribution. Better imagine how that works. Imagine being able to hand select an Uber driver, for instance, then adding 4 or 5 of those drivers that you used in the past to a favorite list, right? So whenever you need a ride, notifications would get pushed out to those drivers specifically. And from there, you'd be able to select who you wanted to take a ride with for that day. Our platform functions very similar to that, except the labor pools are built from seasoned manufacturing and distribution professionals with skill sets ranging from material handling, forklift operations, CNC machine operations, and beyond. So having said that, over the past 2 months, we've been in a very unique position to interact with businesses that have been reaching out to us to better understand how our platform could help them weather the storm in light of all this COVID-19 activity that's sort of popped up out of nowhere.
This is critical right here. What's the application today as it relates to COVID and how businesses react? I'm stoked about that.
Yeah, that's it. And so from those conversations, there were two primary things in particular that sort of stood out that we'd kind of like to touch on today with the group. The first thing really is just continuity across business operations. Pretty much every conversation around whether the forum we had ultimately led to the mutual agreement that the show must go on. We all play a critical role in keeping the gears of the global economy machine turning, right? After seeing quite a few of these global crises come and go, one thing's clear for certain. There are always winners and losers. At the end, companies with a solid plan in place that show resiliency in the face of adversity are the ones that come out ahead. Tying into that, the importance of flexibility during times like these are critical. Flexibility from an operational standpoint allows businesses to mitigate the impacts of these types of catastrophic events, essentially by keeping them agile and being able to react to changes in market conditions on a real-time basis. So businesses that saw this as a necessity and built contingency into their operations and using our platform, a labor pool, essentially are cruising through these issues around call-outs and sanitation, operating lean crews to reduce operational costs. And they're still able to knock out any orders by scaling up in as little as 2 hours notice. And Carter has some really great examples, of businesses that have reached out to us that he'd like to kind of touch on with you guys today as well.
Yeah, so my name is Carter Stanley. I'm Director of Operations here in Georgia for Variable. So I'm going to share two completely different scenarios that we've seen here. One that we'll start out with is, this is going to be a challenging time no matter what. For some people, this is going to be a fundamental challenge on the demand side. Sales have crashed. Production. Maybe you're overstaffed at times, et cetera. And for others, this is actually going to be a boon to their business, depending on what industry they're in, or maybe they play a critical role in a supply chain for critical products. And you're going to be dealing with a whole different set of problems. Whether it's you don't have the work available, or it's sporadic, or you have significant problems with call outs, people not able to make it to work for lack of childcare, among other reasons. And especially if we get to the point where potentially public transportation is shut down, that's only going to exacerbate those issues even further, because that's adding another wrinkle. So I want to talk about first one business, Uniform Advantage. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they're a manufacturer and distributor of hospital scrubs and other medical clothing. So right now they're actually seeing a pretty large boon to their orders in this environment. And so we've been engaged with them since about May of last year. And over that time, they've built a pool of operators, as we call our workers. And they've got about 200 operators in that pool. They'll scale anywhere from one day having 20 people in their facility all the way up to 100. And this is in addition to their full-time workforce. So we don't replace full-time workforces. We simply are a flexible component additional to that. And so we're in every part of their operation, from fulfillment, returns, embroidery, shipping, receiving, you name it. So from the onset of the crisis, they were, they came up with a plan. They automatically were facing issues from their full-time force, needing to leave either from being sick and wanting to self-quarantine, or to, the bigger issue with a lot of people just simply not having childcare, and they need to go home and address those issues before they can return to work. But because they've already built this large pool of 200 operators, from an operational standpoint, it doesn't really matter whether one FTE or one operator, for that matter, couldn't be there, because they've got 199 other people, of which someone doesn't have those constraints and can make it. So really the fundamental foundation of our platform is that one person doesn't necessarily mean you have to have one job. And so by building out contingency through this flexible workforce, you're not relying operationally on one person for having one function. So that's, and another thing that we heard in there, concerns around sanitation. They're actually using our platform now. We'll be launching this actually tomorrow for a daily sanitation role. Now, this wouldn't, substitute any professional services in the case of, you did find the virus to be active in the facility and, desanitation. But, they're focused on, touching daily hot spots, doorknobs, handles, high volume contact areas. And it's just something additional that they've, found value in the platform and easily and quickly able to execute that on our platform. And switching gears real quick to the opposite side, which I know is probably relevant for most of you, we've got a large, well-known brand of luxury goods down in McDonough. It's a giant automated DC. They've got the robots and everything, but they've got the opposite problem. So right now, nobody is buying, fancy purses, luxury goods, perfumes, all that stuff. So basically, their online orders are still chugging along a bit, but their retail stores have gone to basically zero. So they needed to essentially shut down. So they've got this giant high volume DC. If they've got a couple hundred orders, the DC would literally, chug through those orders in about an hour. So it doesn't even really make sense, to run it until they collect a backlog. So because they've been on variable and using our flexible work solution, those impacts are at least minimized to their full-time force. So they're able to scale down on the platform and just post for when they need it. So they basically shut down last Thursday through Saturday, and they collected enough backlog where it made sense to run on Sunday. And, they posted for 6 people on Sunday. That's a small number. And it was only for a handful of hours, but it's what they needed. And we were able to execute that. And so we're just happy that we're able to provide value to these companies. And it's not like the other, traditionally we had between 30 and 50 people a day in there. And in a traditional model, you'd say, well, hey, what happens to the 30 to 50 people? They're out of a job. But with our model, because we've got this network of over 200 businesses, and some people are actually booming right now and some people are down, we're actually able to flow those people to other opportunities within the Atlanta market. So it's really, we're a giant flow to work network. And we can, service the demand where it is, and then help contain costs, for those that, that need that. As
well, guys, real quick, I don't know if this is the first time we've run it all the way up to the line. I don't know if the line will cut us off, but if it does, we'll make sure that we reach out to everybody. We got it set up for the Zoom meeting goes till 11 o'clock. So in the event this shuts down, we're going to continue the call beyond the 11 o'clock mark, if possible. But if not, what we're going to do is we'll take any questions. We'll make sure that we get connected. Okay, I just got a note from my friends at Optimum Productions. It says it won't shut down. So thank you for that. But we do want to make sure that we get y'all's information. What's the best way? On the website, there is a link to the variable web page, and we'll make sure that we put in the event notes how best to communicate with you guys as well. Okay, thank you, Heather. Everybody's laughing except for me because I thought it might shut down. But the variable program, again, if you have any level of interest, I mean, this is a great tool to understand how it works now, but also in preparation for the future. To be able to, one of the best ways I think Jacob explained to me is he said, if you've got an operation that needs 50 employees during normal times, but surges you need 70, but when it gets a little light you need 20. It's hard to staff for 50 if you just need 20. So this concept and this work model I think is really exciting, especially now with the challenges that we're facing here with the coronavirus as it relates to manufacturing and supply chain, making sure that we got the right people. So with that said, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna add show notes, and we'll make sure that you're able to connect with our buddies at Variable to get in-depth information to see how it works. They were able to set me up to work with the program a little bit, and I'm very impressed with the way that it's set up. Top shelf, really great products. If you have a need in that space. So with that, stand by 1 second here. What we're going to do is I do want to transition real quick because we got to make sure that we're monitoring folks' time on this. There are two things I would like to add. Again, thank you, Variable and the team there, so much for helping support GMA and supporting this call, because I know that information shared is going to make a big difference for all of our friends in manufacturing. The other piece that I do have two other things I'd like to share with you. Our Mark Munson from Ace Micro Technologies, he is a Microsoft partner. They just rolled out, if you're interested in, there's a product that Microsoft uses, if you're familiar with it, it's called Microsoft Groups. Microsoft Teams. If you're interested in plugging in and getting access to that, if you've not used it, we know that because of the virus, a lot of people are finding new ways to communicate. This is a cool way to do that. But Microsoft has extended through its partner channel access to be able to use Microsoft Teams for 6 months with absolutely no strings attached. If you're interested in that, shoot us an email and I'll make the connection. Again, no monthly fees, no contracts or anything. But send me a request at support@Georgia Manufacturing, and we'll send that information. The other, hold on 1 second. Latest news just got in. Okay. And then the other piece that we're going to touch on real quick is you will be receiving an email if you're on the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance channel. What we're going to do is we're going to send out an email for a product that I've been using for years. It's executive summaries, where they summarize books, executive snippets of books. Again, I've been using it for years because, the ability for me to sit down and read for hours. And what this does is it breaks it down into little segments in 15 minutes. Basically, it's cliff notes, some of the best leadership, personal development. I know that a lot of you guys, you're going to have team members, leadership that may have some time on their hands. If they do, personal development, instead of them sitting around watching the news and getting all wound up about that, they can invest in themselves and learn new skills, new processes to be able to be better leaders and better in their space. So we'll be sending that out again if it's appropriate. This is we work an unbelievable deal for GMA members to be able to have access to that. So those are the two pieces. If you have not subscribed to the Manufacturing News Network, I would really encourage you and invite you to. It's $9.95 for members, $19.95 for non-members of GMA. That's per person, and that's on a monthly basis. It automatically sets it up on a subscription. You cancel it anytime. It's no big deal. Just let us know. We'll turn it off. It's easy to do. But that will allow you access to this type of roundtable on the back end. We're going to continue to keep the interviews on the front end. We've got tons of information. We're going to continue to place open and available to the public. If you want to have access to roundtables like this, we've got 6 of those already on the books. We're doing HR, we're doing finance. We got a great speaker going to be giving us some insights on sales and marketing, executive leadership, and operations. Those are the key areas that we'll be covering next week. The schedule's already available. You can only register if you're subscribed to the channel. So with that, again, guys, please be safe. Understand that this too shall pass. We're going to get through it. It might pass like a kidney stone, but it's going to pass, right? So just keep your heads up, keep loving on you folks, communicate, and keep doing the right things. And if you can find somebody in your community that may be a little less fortunate or maybe elderly, you can take time today, take 10 minutes out of your schedule today to go see what they need and see if you can be a blessing to them. We're going to have to pray through this thing as a community and work together as a team. And GMA, we're committed, help you succeed. If there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. You know, send us some information, connect to us by email, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys on future events. We do have one more call that's open to the public on Thursday at 10 o'clock. Lauren Matajewski with HLB Gross Collins is going to be our co-host on that one. She sponsored that session, and we're going to be talking about the finance aspect of how coronavirus is going to be impacting manufacturers. We don't have all the answers yet, but we're going to share what we have, and I promise you it will be as well researched as anything that's available today. So again, thank you all for being on the call, participating in this. We're going to get through it together, but just keep your heads up and look forward to seeing you at upcoming events. Thanks.
Thank you.